Hello, and welcome to the Cheap Seats FPL edition. So there's the Cheap Seats normal edition where we talk what happens on the field, and this edition we talk about what happens off the field on people's computer screens and phones in the Fantasy Premier League. My name is Mpho Mutlwane, and I'm the host of the show with AB and Wahid joining us to chat about the FPL season that started last week with Game Week 1. We saw a whole lot of things that happened. A Salah hat trick. People, if you triple captain Salah last week, you set yourself up on a very good note. We saw a couple of disappointments here and there, and we're here to discuss all of that and what's going to happen going into Game Week 2. Manchester United and Manchester City come back in now, and they start their seasons. So what happened to their players? Did you save them on the bench? Like I did, or were you holding on to that wild card to bring them in this week? To discuss all of that, we've got AB, we've got Wahid. Gents, how are you doing, and how are your FPL teams doing? I'll start with AB because Wahid's got an interesting answer.
So I'm doing great. My FPL team got off to a very average start, I must say. I'm content with my points. Look, I mean, it's hard finishing with 100 points at the end of the Game Week 1. I wish the league could end. I wish the league could end.
Drop your cap, and where's your bat? Raise your bat.
I've got an aircon remote, so I'll raise that. Yeah, jeepers. To be honest, though, I got so lucky. Like, it's just one of those things. I nearly triple captain Salah. I thought, why not? Let me triple captain him. My long shots of Reece James and James Justin paid off, so well done there. And I got very lucky with that Palace boy Tyrick Mitchell, because he was benched, and then I was sure Saka was going to play, but he didn't play, and then it pulled out. But yeah, very content with it. But I'm in a tough spot now because I prepped for a Game Week 1, and I didn't prep long term, so may have to use wildcard, but more on that later.
Wahid, how's your team looking, my man?
I have nothing to say.
How many points did you get, boy?
I have nothing to say.
Which players did you have Salah in your team?
I have nothing to say.
Oh, the Jose Mourinho in Wahid is coming out.
Are you going to speak, Wahid?
That's
what he gets in trouble. I have nothing to say.
So, how many points did you get?
I keep scrolling. Where are you?
40 points.
That's not bad.
40 points. I think I'm last in all my leagues. I think I only had 40 by luck because I had Mitchell on my bench and like half my players. I overthought Fantasy Premier League so badly this week.
You had 2 Spurs players, bro. What is wrong with you?
That was my issue too. I need to find a way to get Dele Alli out, and he's already lost value. He's at 7.9.
Look, Jose Mourinho is trying to find a way to get Dele Alli out. So
I know, but he should have told us before. Like, he starts the season at halftime, he gets subbed off. I'm like, oh my lord, this is just something else. I got 62 points, not too bad. I think that's normally that's the average I'm trying to hit every week to see how far we can go. I know you need to hit the 80s and the 100s to get through. My big turning point was picking Aubameyang over Salah. Both of them were playing newly promoted sides. I thought, hey, let me go for the guy that I know and trust. In Aubameyang, I didn't know what Salah was going to come out, and Mo Salah wiped the floor with me. So I have an opportunity cost of 20 points that could have happened had I not chosen. Was 13 points if you want to be a little bit more accurate, because Aubameyang had 7 points. So, but on my side, it was okay. I think, my issue was Doherty. Matt Doherty is my issue. Actually, every Spurs player on my side, I had 2 Spurs players on my side, which probably is the reason why I didn't have a great week, didn't come through. So those are the only 2 guys that didn't come through. I had picked Eberechi Eze to see if he could get a 30-minute blitzkrieg against Southampton. Maybe he could get an assist or a goal. That didn't work. So that's how my week went. So, gents, as we go into game week 2 and we're making our decisions, and we're moving our teams around, Manchester United and Manchester City are coming back into the start of the Premier League season. How are you incorporating those players into your squads? What I did was I had a Manchester United player in my side. I picked him before the season started. I put him on the bench for this season for game week 1, and then I had 2 of my star players. One of them was going to rotate out for a City player this week, but they both performed well, so they're staying right now. So that was my way of doing it instead of blowing the team up and doing a wild card. How are you doing it, Wahid? Since you're the one with not the greatest of starts so far.
Yeah, so I hadn't intended to use my wild card up front, but I had intended to use free transfers to bring in Man United players. I had chosen Ings as my striker and left 0.5 in the bank to be able to bring Martial in. I overthought that. I had initially chosen Jimenez, and at the very last minute chose Ings. I overthought that one. Even though in the last show I said to AB I wasn't going to touch Ings, so there we go. So I would.
And I said I was going to touch Ings, but I didn't touch Ings.
Yeah, so I've actually now changed up. So I remember that in the last show I said I was going to use free transfers to bring in Man United players. I've now had to change a few things because I feel like I did overthink FPL in the first week, and I needed a little bit of a change. I picked players who played very well, who didn't produce much output. For example, Harvey Barnes. I chose him in the first week. He was fantastic. Had a lot of good opportunities, but didn't score. I chose James Rodriguez. Same thing. Had a big impact on the game, but no real FPL output. So I think that was my first week was sort of caught in that, me trying to think of who's going to play well rather than who's going to have real output. So yeah, in terms of City, I'm not touching their players for now. I'm too scared of Pep rotation. I don't know who's going to play. I don't know what system they're going to use, and I'm going to hang back on choosing City players for 2-3 weeks.
Even if it's Kevin De Bruyne.
Yeah, my Kevin De Bruyne one is a toss-up between him or I'm only having one premium pick at the moment in that 11.5 or 12 mark. I can only afford one, so at the moment I had Aubameyang last week. I've actually changed it to Salah because I think that Salah is going to be the main goal-scoring outlet for Liverpool this season. Whereas I think Arsenal might share their goals a little bit more than Liverpool. That Aubameyang will still get a fair share of the goals, but I think Liverpool will be more Salah centric than last season. So yeah, I've changed that up a bit. So yeah, that's my pick. So Kevin De Bruyne, not yet, simply because I want to back Mo Salah for a few weeks.
So a player like Raheem Sterling, do you think he's also going to be a part of the Pep rotation?
Well, yeah, they have Ferran Torres now. They have Riyad Mahrez. They have Raheem Sterling. They have Bernardo Silva. All these players can play out wide. Even Phil Foden can play out wide. And I just never know who's going to be taking those City positions. There's so many players to go into so few positions. For example, Bernardo Silva could start out wide one week where his output from an FPL perspective might be really good. But in the next week, he comes infield playing in the old David Silva role where he would almost assist the assist. So he plays really well, but he doesn't. There's no FPL output. So again, that's a difficult one to try and pick Bernardo Silva there. You never know which position he's going to be playing in.
AB, are you blowing up your team, or since you've gotten 100 piece, are you just going to use the one free transfer to get your City or United players in?
So my issue is Saka. And he went from a 5.5, which is great for a midfielder, to now a 5.4. So now I'm losing money, which is an issue. If you look at City's first 4 games, it is Wolves, Leicester, Leeds, Arsenal. Now, from a defensive point of view, I wouldn't touch any City players, but I mean, especially those first 4 games, you know they're not going to be walkovers for City. Then they've got West Ham, and then David Moyes, knowing David Moyes will probably win that game because it's David Moyes. and then Sheffield, Liverpool, Spurs. So City don't have the easiest run in, or easiest start of the league, whereas their last games is pretty chilled. And then if you look at United's start of the leagues, it's also a weird one. You've got Palace at home, fine, cool, but they're scoring goals, so you wouldn't touch their defenders. Then you've got Brighton away, fine, you'd expect United to win that. Then it's a Spurs team with rejuvenated signings, potentially Gareth Bale. You've got Newcastle, who looked a lot better than last season. With Callum Wilson in now scoring goals. Newcastle finally have a proper number 9. You've got then Chelsea, Arsenal, AC Milan. Everton, and then United start
you might as well
getting
call them AC Milan. They look like
AC Milan. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, then you've got so. I'm a little bit apprehensive of flooding my team with 3 United players, which is normal for a United fan. I definitely think I need to use a wild card, but will I bombard my team with United and City players? No. Maybe I'll go with 1 or 2 max, and that's the best case scenario. I'm very apprehensive of the stage. If there are City players I would only touch Kevin De Bruyne. I think he's the best player in City's team, second best player, and the third best player in the league, or in the top 3 of the league, behind the Aubameyangs and the Salahs. But if you look at, it's a very difficult start for the big guys, and I think the next few game weeks is going to be on how you can actually incorporate the Everton players, the Spurs players, because now they'll be resurgent, the Wolves players, hell, even the Chelsea players, because Chelsea have got a favorable run of games, and so do Wolves coming up. So that's, maybe it's a bit too early for a wild card, or maybe your wild card could be used to incorporate those sort of differentials. I don't know. It's very interesting, and I'm stuck right now.
So normally for the first wild card,
you're gonna have the issue of trying to integrate new signings, which I've now used my wild card, so I'm not going to have that opportunity to get a lot of them in. But you're going to have the likes of Gareth Bale coming in to the FPL system, and you might want to start looking at him. He might be a type of player who Mourinho tends to build his side around, who might be sharing the goal scoring burden with Harry Kane. And that might make him an excellent FPL pick. I remember a couple of seasons ago when he left the league, if you didn't have Gareth Bale in your side, you might as well not have been playing. He was that good.
I didn't. And that's why I lost. So I normally wait for my wild card I wait for the end of the transfer window. And then I'll start using my wild card then. I hope normally just before December starts, because of the run of games that happen in December. You want a large enough squad to kind of, because the game weeks normally will tend to be like, you'll have a midweek game week and a Saturday game week, and so it helps kind of to set your team up like that. I think for me this week, I'm not gonna. I've already used my one transfer. It was getting rid of the one Tottenham player that I have that hasn't lost value. It's not Dele Alli, and I've used it on. I've gone with AB. I've incorporated an Everton player. I put in Luca Digne. Me, the way my strategy is I have 2 set defenders who will play the entire season as my defensive partnership, essentially, and the third defender rotates amongst the 3 mid-tier table defenders who will come on, and I normally pick the guy who has the easiest home game. Because home games equals clean sheets in this league most of the times, unless if you are a newly promoted side like a West Brom. But I don't touch West Brom with a 10-foot pole. So that's what I've done now. I think from my perspective, I had Martial on the bench, so he's coming in, and Batshuayi seemingly goes back because he didn't get any game time for Crystal Palace at all. And he's not going to score against Manchester United anyway, so what's the point?
So
he's
going to score.
If he does, I have a situation in my midfield that could get Batshuayi in if somebody doesn't play. So that's my little tidbit there. So gents, going into the week, there have been people transferred in. I'm going to tell you who the person who's been transferred in the most. That is Bruno Fernandes. I'm not going to tell you how much, but how many people have, because that's going to be a nice little question at the end for us. Which other players do you think the viewers and the people playing FPL should be looking to get into their squads after the game week 1 performances? A lot of guys who've never played in the Premier League before and have shone. Are there any names that you guys are putting on your watch lists as the season goes on?
So for me, it's a guy like Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I think at 7 million when he started, we were all wondering about this Everton team and how they're going to shape up, and they came to play against Spurs. Okay, it's Spurs, anyone can beat Spurs, but this kid has got something. He's quick, he's strong, he's technical, he can finish, he can arguably use both feet, he can head. And at 7 now, I'm just checking his price now, 7.1 with the favorable run of games. You've got West Brom at home, Brighton at home, and Palace away. Okay, cool. They face Liverpool, but it's Everton. Liverpool, they're gonna go all out there. I think Dominic Calvert-Lewin is someone I'd be looking at getting in favor of someone who I had, which was Richarlison, who now plays more on the wing. So he'd be supplying more. So I'd get Dominic Calvert-Lewin into your team very quickly before his price.
Richarlison had 7 shots last week, and he couldn't score. And that's the problem with him. It's bothersome.
How he didn't score that? Oh.
Yeah. So in terms of getting players into my team, I've got practically a new team, but there was one that I had my eye on. Who also we've talked about City and United not playing last week, but there's another one that I had my eye on who wasn't playing last week, and that's Ollie Watkins at Aston Villa. He scored against United in the preseason friendly. He scored in the Carabao Cup. He scored 26 goals last season, and at 6 million, he's quite a bargain little player. I think his percentage ownership is quite low. He's only owned by 1.4% of teams. So he's a nice little differential to get into your side, I would think. And being Aston Villa's record signing, he's not going to struggle for minutes. And not struggling for minutes means that there's opportunities to score, especially with players like Trezeguet and Grealish loading the bullets for him, which is where Aston Villa struggled last season. They had their creative players, but they didn't have anybody to put the chances away. And I think that might change the season.
Yeah, I'm excited for Ollie Watkins. He's on my watch list. He's actually in one of my fantasy FPL draft teams. I'm excited. I'm waiting for him to come on and show the world what he has, because I think he had a great season at Brentford last year. I'm going to throw out some names. So obviously, one of the guys that I made my pick this week was Luca Digne coming into side. Guys like Castagne, I think, are great players to bring in. You're going to get a few clean sheets with Leicester. They're playing at home this weekend, so that should help you a lot. And he's also a threat up front, so which kind of is something that you're looking for in a defender. I don't have Willian in my side. But at 8 million, or he's now at 8.1. So if you've got that extra one, you can spread it around to Willian. I think he's one that people should be looking out for. I think a lot of the goals that Arsenal are going to score are going to come through him, and largely. And the reason why I have Aubameyang is because if Willian's going to play on the right and Aubameyang's on the left, that diagonal pass that creates that angle for Aubameyang is something that is going to create a lot of goals for Arsenal. Look, I think from my perspective, Patrick Bamford, I didn't have him in my side. He's a great addition. He's a 5.6 now, so he's him and Willian were the first two to get that little price bump up there. But like, is a guy like, and I'm going to ask, a guy like Jack Grealish, does he warrant being selected and being given a run in the FPL team?
I had him for a significant amount of time last year, and my tactic last year was often to switch between Grealish and Maddison depending on the fixtures. So I would often use my free transfer just to get one of those two in. And I find that what happened with both those players is they have very patchy form. So they'll have 3 or 4 good weeks, and then have 6 or 7 quiet weeks, and then 3 or 4 good weeks, and again 5 or 6 quiet weeks. And that's and the trick with those players is to try and figure out who's in their purple patch and who's going through their small slump. So my tactic around that would maybe to be have 3 or 4 players in your mind in and around the same price tag. So, for example, Grealish, James Maddison, Harvey Barnes, all listed at 7. I'd look further than that as well. I can't think of one off the top of my head. James is 7.5. So I'd have four players in my mind, and depending on the good form of 1 or 2 of them, I would use my free transfers to bring them in and out of the side, just trying to figure out when their purple patches are.
Okay. Yeah. So, AB, anybody else that you're looking into going from game week 1 that you're like, okay, fine, this guy is definitely on my watch list, and I want him to do well.
So I think a guy like Daniel Podence, exceptionally. We saw how Wahid in the last show mentioned that he's a mini Hazard, especially in his rear end. But at 5.5 is disgustingly cheap. I think it's possibly a no-brainer to get someone from that Wolves midfield in. Last season, the popular guys were your João Moutinho's, your Ruben Neves's, but now and your Adama Traore's, of course. But I think Adama now with his shift to replace Doherty as a right wing back at 6.5 is you don't touch that. So I think Daniel Podence could be a really cool differential. If I'm not mistaken, he's owned by about 0.5% of managers, which for me is, let's get him in. Worst case scenario, my bench is filled with starters. So my midfield is filled with starters. So worst case, you can bench him and see what happens. But he's going to start Podence. Another guy is let's look at that Leeds team. They've got Jack Harrison there at a 5.5, and England international Calvin Phillips, who's 5 million. I mean,
he was in my squad from the start.
Oh wow! I mean, look at that
midfielder. Why would you choose him?
He's Calvin Phillips.
He's not an attacking player, so he's going to play really well and do and get no FPL output. I don't understand. It's like choosing Matic.
The thing is I'm looking now at these budget guys who are the 4.5, 5 to 5.5 to fill in, so I can overload on the long term guys. And you do need at least 1 or 2 of them. So I think in your midfield you need a 5.5 or a 5 who's going to start every week. He may not get you points, but he's going to free up some budget for you to invest 12 million or 11.5 mil in your Salahs, Mane's, Aubameyangs. It's for me. That's my thing.
And I do think for Leeds against Liverpool, they were a tad defensive, and you can see I was really surprised to see Calvin Phillips play that deep, because I've always seen him play slightly higher on the pitch and try and assist when now it will be Rodrigo and Patrick Bamford go forward.
But Phillips takes free kicks as well, so
it was hallmark of Bielsa. Calvin Phillips started as a number 10, and he slowly brought him back in the field until he became sort of a defensive screen just in front of the back four. So I would be hesitant there. I know maybe he's talking about filler places, and Jeff Hendrick to Newcastle might be one that you would like.
He had a really great game week. I was really surprised to see him play that well in his first game for Newcastle. Gents, who you I'm not going to ask you who you are captaining, but what are the captaincy options that you are considering, and we should all consider going into the game week? I'll just give you 5 names, and you've got more. There's Salah versus Chelsea. Mo Salah had the most shots last game week, 9 shots. 8 of those were in the box. You've got Sadio Mane, but I think he's probably going to not be. He's going to be in the Salah shadow for a while now. You've got Raheem Sterling starting again. Raheem had scored 14 goals away from home for Chelsea. That's the most of anybody in the Premier League last year. There's Aubameyang against David Moyes West Ham. I think that's going to be a tasty pick. And there's Fernandes there as well. Bruno Fernandes from Manchester United. Who you guys thinking? If there's anybody else that I've left off the list, do let me know.
Yeah, I would add Martial to that list. Tasty little fixture against Crystal Palace. An opportunity for him to score goals, get assists. I would definitely. Well, you know who I'm going with now. So yeah, yeah. That's. I would add that to the list. My options from my squad were between Martial and Salah, and then you always have the option of trying to use a differential as your captain, because that's going to be where you make up points against your competitor. So if you were going to choose someone like Ollie Watkins and he was going to grab 2 goals on debut, you might be looking very pretty against your rivals who wouldn't think that far. So you always have that option. It's a high risk, high reward type of thing, because the differential is really just that. It's a differential. But yeah, so you do have that option going into this week as well.
AB, what do you think from a captaincy perspective? What are you thinking?
Yeah, look, I think the most popular captain will be Aubameyang. I think almost half of owners have him, and it's a reasonable captaincy choice. He's up there with a contender, but I'm also thinking let's captain someone who is playing against a newly promoted team, not Leeds, so one of the West Ham or Fulhams. And let's captain a team at home. So that's between, for me, an Everton player or a Leeds player as a differential. So going with someone like Bamford as a captain is, a good idea. Well, to try and differentiate yourself, or even a Calvert-Lewin, a James, a Richarlison. Although it's really risky, purely because are these guys used to the Premier League? We know Calvert-Lewin is, but is he going to go and score you the 20-25 goals that Aubameyang is going to get you? So that's where I'm torn in.
I can tell you that.
I'm worried about captaining Salah this week. It's a tough one because it's Chelsea, but then again it could be a 5-4, and Salah goes and does what he did last week.
Another hat trick.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing about captaincy. You want to be a differential, but you also want to be with the pack. Just like last week, the most captain player was Aubameyang, and those who captained, I think a third of the people. I think Salah was captain third, a third of the amount that Aubameyang was captained, and then he scored that hat trick, and then so that's the reason why guys like AB are centurions this week. The other player that I forgot is Jamie Vardy. They're playing Burnley at home. Burnley's first game in the Premier League. That should be an easy and easy one if you've got a Jamie Vardy in your team. I think, gents, let's end it at that. Here's a question for you. I've got questions. Who was the most selected player in game week 1? This one should be easy.
Aubameyang.
Trent for me.
And the winner is AB, Trent Alexander-Arnold, the most selected player in week 1. Well, he didn't have the greatest of games, so that kind of really hurt.
It's weird. I didn't understand. I know a friend of mine messaged me, and he showed me his team, and it was Trent, Robertson, and Van Dijk in his defense, and I was like, bruh, this is like, okay, cool. If Liverpool get a clean sheet, you're sorted. I mean, Trent is he's a long-term player, but I'm worried if I'm a Liverpool fan and having defenders in their team. I don't know. I'm not sold yet. Because one small mistake, and yeah.
And so one last question for you guys. Which player had the highest game week average in FPL last season? And what was his number?
What do you mean game week average points?
Yeah, points average.
Kevin De
Fernandes.
Bruyne got 251 points, I think.
Okay.
Okay, for me, it's
hold-
Fernandes because he got a lot of
Yeah.
points in a very few game weeks.
yeah, Fernandes. Fernandes got, I think it was through something ridiculous, like 160 points in 9 games or something odd like that.
So you guys are right with Bruno Fernandes. He is 8.4 points per match. So if you're looking right now to get Bruno Fernandes in your team and you don't have him, that's the type of return you should be expecting this coming season. So,
But he was more cheaper last season than he is right now. He's 10.5 now.
look, if
Jesus.
Aubameyang or Salah start failing, you've got a man in Fernandes who's going to keep you going the whole way through. It's essentially you've got house money. Literally, it's what it is. It's just figuring out which the Manchester United players you don't want in your side as you go
All
along.
32 in fantasy football. You have to scroll to 2 pages for United.
Yes, we know, because you guys have the biggest squad, but you still are crying about signings. So
because we can't. I mean, because they're all useless. I mean, there's a lot of guys.
yeah. So
How much is Phil Jones worth? Phil Jones is worth 5. Oh my goodness me.
Okay, let's end this. Let's end the show here. Everybody else, thank you for watching. Thanks, AB. Thanks, Wahid. Really great show this week. Good luck in setting your teams up. Remember the deadline is Saturday, I think midday South African time. Enjoy this game week 2 of fixtures, especially that tasty Chelsea versus Liverpool match. I just love watching those guys fight amongst themselves. And then we'll just try to pick up the pieces where they may. But have a great week. Enjoy. If you want to use your wild card, all the best to you. And we'll come back to find out if it all worked out. And if we're back on track with the FPL seasons. Remember, it's not over until it's over, and there's 37 more game weeks left of the season. So enjoy it and have a great week ahead. We'll be back next week from myself, Mpho, AB, and Wahid on the cheap seats on 1WSR. Remember, subscribe, share, and like the 1WSR platform. Le sale, kakagiso.